welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and the podcast is available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Just a tremendous show for you guys today. I really enjoyed this interview. Been wanting to talk to him for a while now. My guest on the podcast today is Ruben Dominguez. He is Senior Director of Social Media Content and Strategy for the Portland Timbers, an MLS team, Major League Soccer team that does a great job with content over the years. And Ruben has been there now, overseeing that team. This does a great job. We talk a lot about how he thinks about the strategy behind all their content, developing new fans, the business case, thinking about developing those global fans because they have players from all around the world. How they seek to really juxtapose themselves alongside soccer fans or football fans, as it may be, who may be like Premier League teams or La Liga teams, Bundesliga teams alongside an MLS club. Just so much good insight here from Ruben. So stick around for that. Here he is, Ruben Dominguez of the Portland Timbers. Back with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to be chatting with him. I've been enjoying it just chatting offline. We could have been recording part of it already. The podcast is going to be great today. My guest on the podcast is Ruben Dominguez. He is Senior Director of Social Content and Strategy for the Portland Timbers. Welcome to the podcast today, Ruben.
Hey, Neil. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Hell yeah. So psyched to pick your brain. The Timbers do such a good job with content and just have such a great dedicated fan base there. And you guys do a great job of engaging them. So we're going to have a great discussion today. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, we want to learn about you. Tell us about your career path. You've had a lot of good stops along the way and what you're doing with the Timbers today. And any tips for folks that want to try to do what you do.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's been a long journey, but I kind of started like anyone else. I finished my playing career. And in college, I wanted to kind of be a journalist. And as I was, writing articles, I tried to find ways to enhance those. So I started taking pictures, doing little videos, and all that kind of led up to me posting on my own channels. And then also working for a news station, I started to kind of do things on social for them when it was kind of in its infancy. Got a chance at A&M, Texas A&M, that is, doing football social content, moved on to the basketball side there, but ultimately wanted to get back into the soccer space. So I've kind of gone up the leagues in the US from USL, NWSL, and now working with one of the best franchises in MLS. So it's been really cool. I think as far as the tip goes, like I'm just always ready. I just always have a resume ready, and you just never know when the opportunity comes. So I just try to take that into every day. So it's been a fun ride, and hopefully many more years to come.
No, I love that, hearing that path, because you kind of embody what we tell a lot of students to what they should be doing is like get experience, create your own stuff, and diversify your skills, step into the college SID offices or whatever and say, how can I help? Like you did the thing, and you built all those skills in that background to then earn your way. And there's no surprise that you've been able to move up the food chain, so to speak, and get where you are today. So my hat's off to you on doing it the right way and being a good example for others to follow along. Just get out and start creating, man. And it's good that you were able to do that.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, very fun.
Were you sort of like intentionally diversifying your skills, knowing that like, okay, I got the writing part down. Let me try to add this photography part. Let me try to learn some video. Like, was this kind of a natural thing that like, hey, if I'm gonna be in social, or was there like almost like I'm gonna be in social? I'm not just gonna do whatever, try to work for a TV station. I'm gonna be in social. And therefore I need to diversify my skills. Like, how do you think about skill development early on, and even as you moved up into more leadership roles?
I mean, I think it's half and half. I think I realized that I always wanted to be well-rounded, like kind of being an athlete. I feel like I had that mentality where, I would do, like I played soccer, so I'd do some things on the pitch and I was like, I need to work on my left foot, or I need to work on, checking in to receive the ball and kind of diversifying my game like that. So I kind of approached the professional space in the same way. I'd say the other half of that was probably my college curriculum. I had graphic design classes, I had photography classes, I had video editing classes, and I had kind of sports business classes. So as I kind of dabbled in those in the college space, I really felt like I liked everything I was doing. I really liked graphic design. I really liked taking photos. I loved video editing. I think that was probably by far my biggest love in the space. So I think when it came time to put them all together and really show what I could do, I think it just kind of naturally came. And luckily, the platforms give you a space to kind of put that stuff out in the world
Oh yeah.
where people can see. So it was fun in that sense.
Yeah, and certainly I imagine having that diverse skill set certainly helps, especially when you're in those, the smaller leagues like USL at the time NWSL, and as you move up and get more resources, maybe you can have more specialized individuals, and someone might just be focused on video most of the time. Someone might be focused on photo most of the time. Someone might be focused on strategy most of the time. Do you find now, like when you're thinking about constructing your team, it's something we talk about on the podcast periodically, do you look for those generalists that kind of that know a little about a lot, or have like are able to execute across platforms, or is it better to have someone that is really really good at X, and maybe you can teach them a little bit of other things?
Oh yeah, I think it goes both ways. Like I think if you bring in somebody that is very specialized in something, I think if they have the right attitude to want to learn and want to expand their skill sets, that's a great path to take. And I think if you have a generalist that needs to find kind of their niche and find something they want to really lock in on and become an expert in, I think that's also a good route to take. I don't think either of those are wrong. I think for myself though, coming in as that generalist and trying to find what works well, I think what's really helped is that the people that I manage and work with, I can kind of see how they see things or know what they're going through. So I think it really helps in just managing a team, knowing kind of the expectations for each piece, how long it takes, because I have been kind of in those trenches as well. And so I think it just kind of breeds a good environment for all of us that we're working in, and we kind of understand and empathize with each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of understanding when you're asking for something or putting together a project plan and making requirements around like deadlines and timelines, that you know what goes into it, you know what it takes, and that you know what's reasonable and not reasonable, and that definitely goes a long way in being able to manage people effectively. So I want to also like kind of dive into how you started to understand the strategy side of things. I think we kind of take it for granted almost. So like, and I kind of joke all the time too that everyone that has ever posted on social media, period, whether they are in sports or not, or in a social media role or not, they have understood some microcosm of strategy, some micro element of strategy. You are thinking, okay, what's going to get my friends or family members to like this? Like, should I put a question here? This photo is no good. Let me try this photo, or let me do this. This should go first in the carousel, and not this one. This is for stories, not the feed. And so everyone kind of has is a little mini strategist in some ways. But how did you start to develop that strategic mindset of going from the execution side and creation side to start to think about, is this the right thing to create? Is this the right way to create? What do I judge success by? I mean, especially being in diverse roles where college might be different than it is in USL, which might be different than NWSL, which certainly might be different than with the Timbers.
Yeah, I think my earliest lesson, and this is hilarious to think about now, but I think back to it often. But when Snapchat was kind of in its like infancy, I used to travel a lot, whether it was for, my own games or just travel for vacation. And anytime I seemed to be on the road, I would do this thing called Road Trip with Ruben. And I would kind of post, and people would like send in questions and I would answer them. And it was just funny and a chance for me to like talk with my friends, just to pass time on all these kind of trips. And it's a good laugh, and I look back on it now. We all had fun, but I think that was my first kind of like insight into, okay, you can give people what they want. And I would test it, and some trips I wouldn't do it, and people would see me somewhere and they're like, why don't we do Road Trip with Ruben? Or like, when is it coming? And of course this is like, not thousands and thousands of people. It's just kind of like my friends. But I thought it was a really valuable lesson into just giving people kind of what they want. Now, for me on my side, the other part of the strategy I had to learn was like, what do you want to put out? Do you want to keep doing this? And so I think when you match those two together in any position you're at, it's like giving the people what they want, but also showing like what your brand is. And when I think those two meet in the middle, you have a very solid strategy, and you can really build off of that. Obviously, when you get to measuring success, you're looking at, numbers or kind of the objectives. But I think that's the really cool thing, is just setting those objectives and working towards those and giving an ample amount of time to judge those successfully. And then from there, you can make the decisions. Do you want to keep doing this? Is this something you can phase out? And then just kind of going from there. So yeah, I think back to that often, and I try to remember that, when we're really trying to sell a sports franchise, a team, a school, you got to give the people what they want, but make sure that it matches your brand and you're being true to yourself.
It's so well articulated, man. And I also just kind of wanted to go and look up some Road Trip with Ruben archive stuff now if I can find it. It
I
sounds,
I don't know if you can find it, but I might have to send you one, but we'll see.
but just the understanding of, I think, of both, like I said, the balance of what do people want and what do I want. And going back to even like your own Road Trip with Ruben stuff, like you might show like, oh, here I am, whatever, eating this greasy fast food meal, or here I am training for a game, and that has different perceptions. Or here's my hotel room, and that might mean that like, oh, look, they must have good budget, or maybe they don't have good budget. And thinking about when you're in the college space, those little things you have to think about, or even with USL and NWSL, where maybe I don't want to show this picture of the field because there's some empty seats there. And that's going to make us look bad, or it's going to make is our practice facility and are we putting us in a good light here, or the people might want to see the players like screwing around a little bit, but is that going to make it look like they're not working hard? Like there's so many different like these little elements that you have to like take into account for that when you're working for these major accounts that can tell a story. You have like everything can be perceived a certain way when it comes across on social. So those little details I think are so important.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Now, I'd love to kind of hear then what that means, and you kind of alluded to a little bit too of what those expectations are for content. And I think back to even my own experience of what do our fans need right now? What do we want to put out there? When you're working for a USL and maybe a lot of your fans are watching games, or maybe not. Maybe it's like a Wednesday night, and that a lot of fans aren't going to be able to because they're out in events, or they're out at their own games on a Saturday and they're playing their kids' games or whatever. And they might need more coverage, more play-by-play versus an MLS where maybe more your fans are watching on television or at the game themselves, so they don't need as much of that play-by-play, and you can do a little more about non-play-by-play, that more like exclusive social media content, I guess. So when you're thinking about like sort of putting together like what are the table stakes for content and where can you kind of go outside of that, and how has that evolved? I think over time we've kind of gotten to this mindset of there was one point where social media and Twitter was play by play, and maybe in certain cases you still need to do that if it's like a game where a lot of people don't have a lot of coverage for, or they weren't able to watch it. But now there's this whole mindset of certainly play-by-play on Twitter is not an ideal thing. There's better ways to engage fans. So how do you think about like what our fans need? They need those notes after practice. They need those notes before a game versus what's actually going to drive engagement, and what's going to help us reach beyond those diehard fans, and what's actually going to like let us be creative as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I guess the best example I can probably give is, a lot of times here with the Timbers, we have a lot of opportunities to go out into the community and have, fans meet players and things of this sort. So I usually, people will say, oh, Ruben just wants to go to the event or whatever. I really use these times to talk to fans and kind of gauge them in that sense, because, if you read the comments, you can get some stuff out of that of what people want. But when you come up to people and they're telling you what they like about the channels or what more they want to see, I think it's always the best thing that you can kind of get. So I really take that stuff seriously. The best example I can give getting to that is press conferences for us, right? So when I first got here, I really thought that as a soccer purist, as a football purist, that press conferences and hearing from the manager and players is the best insight that you can give. Win, draws, losses. It just really gave the opportunity for a manager to speak. And so I was really, pretty hell-bent on getting those out, even if they didn't do the best numbers. There's a good chance to just provide people with info about the team and dictate narratives. So with that being said, a lot of people really saw that as, low numbers, not really any juice for the squeeze. But now that we've kind of had a little bit of a higher manager kind of come in, and people wanting to hear, and people wanting to hear, I thought it worked out well, and now it's something that gets a lot of buzz when we put those out. I think also you have to look on the content side as well. We can use that to our advantage. We can use those bite-sized clips to put out and tell stories as well. So I think that goes, part and parcel there. And then I also think too, that's a chance for our partnerships team to turn around. And if that's a sellable asset for them, they
Yeah.
can use that as well because they know that it's recurring and it's going to do the numbers that the client wants. So that's one of the things. And yeah, it might not be the greatest piece of content, but I think there's a lot that you can get out of it for the organization. So when you're looking at these specific things you're doing, whether it's training photos or arrival photos or all these things that kind of are recurring and come about, I think you just got to kind of put it in that context. How does it work for the fans? How does it work, internally for you all? Is it something that you can get a lot of juice out of the squeeze for? And then how does it work for the business side? And that's kind of how we make decisions with everything. I think we have to kind of put it through that thorough process. And even if it doesn't hit some of those marks, but you feel like you really want to do it, yeah, you go with it, you check the numbers, you check the pulse of the community and just see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I love that mindset. I almost think like there's a funny joke here almost of like how players in basketball hate taking buzzer beater shots because they know it's gonna hurt their shooting percentage. And so it's like maybe like let's just not do these more recurring stuff that doesn't get the most engagement because it's gonna hurt our engagement rate or at the end of the year when we're presenting our metrics. But there's a certain level of like consistency expectations. Like I know that when a piece of news drops, or I want to see what the coach had to say after a game. Like I know that I can go to those platforms and I'm going to get that. And there's that level of consistency and expectations being met. And you're doing your fans a service by providing that, even if it's again not the stuff that's going to pop off quite as much something that goes viral. And so there's certainly something to that when it comes to being able to make the most of your resources. And to your point too, being able to find those consistent recurring things that you can then package up for a sponsor and make it something that they can count on as well. So I think that's really well well thought out for sure. And when I think about that too of getting outside, because I do think one thing that you guys do a really good job of among other things as well is kind of finding those opportunities to try something different and break out, and whether that is a different camera angle or a different type of edit or a different way of looking at a player. I love being able to find those things, and so like when you're thinking about like how often do we take chances? How often do we experiment? How often do we just sit in a room and brainstorm? Like, what's something we haven't tried in a while? Or let's look at something that the Celtics did. Like, can we do something close to that or similar to that? Like, what's your mindset of let's focus on whatever 80% of the stuff that we know we have to do and we know we have already planned to do, and maybe some percentage of let's have some percentage where we can almost like fail intentionally at times, and because we're trying shit, we're taking swings.
Yeah, I think my team will back me up on this, but I'm kind of the mindset like we need to be trying stuff all the time. I think sometimes we do get caught up in like, okay, here's a match day. We got to do this, and this. And I'm kind of the mindset of like, okay, I know we've done this for the past 3 weeks the same way. Can we take a different look at this? Can we do this a different way? Can we do this from the player's perspective? Can we do this from the fans' perspective?
Yeah.
So I really do like to take those swings just as a content crew in full. I think that's the beauty of what you see on social. I think so many people mindlessly scrub through, and you just really need something that catches the eye. So I think more so when we do take those risks, we ask the same questions. How is this going to affect the brand? What is this going to do for us? Could this be something that lives on if we do it? What metrics do we need to measure for? And not just numbers wise, it's like the pulse of the community. If we do something and we see that a lot of fans like it and they're like, we want more of this, but maybe it doesn't fit our brand, then we'll look at it and say, okay, where can we fit this? Or we say, hey, maybe this is our brand because this is something our fans like, our players like, and those are the people that we're speaking for when they go out into, their communities and when they get to talk to their people, what do they want to show about their teams?
Yeah. The perfect thing is something like what is going to get a fan to text it to their friend or send it through in DMs, and that's what that's. I mean, nowadays I even talk to the head of Instagram. That's like what they're shooting for is what content's going to get shared or shares per impression or sends. I think Adam Mosseri calls it. And so it's definitely a great thing about it. And I think in soccer too, in particular, you have so many fans that are those avids, that are the diehards, that are in the supporter section or in the supporters groups and clubs and whatnot. And so like how do you start to think about this is I'm getting great feedback and engagement from these fans, but maybe I'm not reaching the casual fan or vice versa. Maybe I'm doing something that's like, do you almost have to say, okay, these are the same 150 people that are always commenting. They're part of the supporters group, so they're never going to miss a thing I do. Versus, oh, this is something I haven't seen these fans in a while, or this is a different group that is resonating with. Like, do you almost have to think about those different group fan segments, knowing that okay, the diehards are always going to be there, and we want to keep them happy, but we also want to grow that base.
Yeah, the beauty of social, huh? I think that's my favorite part of the job is just kind of figuring that out on a day-to-day basis. I think the thing I can say is that when I look at the Portland fan base, this is not to, talk poorly on any other fan base in MLS, but just strictly speaking for Portland, I think it's a very intelligent fan base in their aptitude for the game of footy. I think, I go to all these other venues sometimes, and, sometimes it's really loud during, maybe like a goal kick or something like that, or just in the regular passages of play. But time after time, week in, week out, when I go to Providence Park, I'll see, a player, one of our outside players, switch the ball to the other side, and you hear the claps in the stadium. And it just feels, as someone that's gone, to Europe, played in Europe, it just feels very European. And I think people, when they do come into the stadium, they really understand that and they feel that same sentiment. So I think just based on that, you can rightly assume that, most of the fans do kind of like the discourse of what you would call like soccer Twitter, and just kind of, how you react with your team, win, lose, or draw, how you are commenting to other teams, the banter behind it, those sorts of inside jokes that you would get. And so we really try to hit that because we feel like that's a very like wide casting net, and to get those casuals, but also still satisfy your fan base. And, there are times where, you would look at it, or, some of the people we talk to that work for European clubs, where they say, oh, that's very like American of you, or Americanized. And I think there's a time and place to do that. But I think also too, at the same time, we have kind of that, obligation to our fan base to kind of show the game and show our content how they like to see it. And I feel like that's the way they see it. So I don't think it's hard. I think it's challenging, I would say, not hard, but challenging in a good way, where it gets us thinking and always keeps us on our toes to put out the best possible content that we can.
Now, it's really interesting because I think as we've come up the last few years here, and I think about TikTok in particular, where you could have a really popular account and you may not ever really do much with your sport. Like they may be huge fans of whatever the Buffalo Bills, I think, who do a great job on TikTok. But you may not even know their American football team because they just have a lot of fun with their players and they do a lot of crazy shit. I'm not saying this is the case necessarily, but there are cases where like might be a really good creative brand and the sport you play doesn't matter. And yet, like, there's something to we are trying to create Timbers fans. We're trying to create soccer fans, and we want them to know that we are a soccer team. And so it's almost like that element of, do we want to win the internet or do we want to, win over soccer fans and create more soccer fans? So I guess there's a little bit of a balance there of like trying to make sure that you're staying in a soccer lane and trying to ultimately gain soccer fans more than, I guess, just like engagers on social media in some ways.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think platform to platform, you really have to make those decisions. So when we look at a social strategy, we're looking platform to platform of what we want to do. I think one thing that we can say about TikTok for us is we kind of just want to show the cool aspects of it, of what we do, of our life, our players, and just show those kind of aspects of the game. Whereas like you look at something like X or Twitter, or Instagram, it's going to be totally different. I think when we look at Twitter, we want to show that we kind of like know ball, because I think that's the best place where you can kind of display that, where things kind of go and you see things from different platforms. And when you do reach these other audiences, whether they support a team in Europe, South America, we want to show that, we kind of know what we're talking about, and we're not one of those like typical American teams or have that stigma. I
Right.
think an example we could provide about that is, when you're showing goal clips, I think there would be, some brands that would you know, take the route of just showing the goal in that 6 seconds and saying that, they want to just show the 6 seconds of the goal, because if, they show all 6 seconds, it'll get pushed into something with the algorithm and
Right.
things like that. Whereas like, maybe 30 seconds before that, we had a really great buildup.
Totally.
And I would say I'm going to show the buildup because, from a brand or being the admin, we understand the full game. So even if we maybe get less numbers on that, or it doesn't hit that algorithm like we want it to, at least we showed that product on the field that maybe the real fans that were tuned in and like know the game would say, okay, that's really cool. I'm glad they understand it. I like that club.
Hell yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, people can't see me, but I've been nodding furiously because as a consumer of content and soccer content, I love when you get to see that build up. Because I even now, like, we're depending on when you're listening to this, it's during Copa America, during the UEFA European Championships, and I know it's like Fox Soccer will almost just default to the end, like the very last minute before. And part of me thinks that's because they want you to tune in and watch and not just follow the highlights on Twitter. But also, it's just like they just want to they want to get you to stay with it. And yet, I'm always like, well, how do they get to that point? Like, how does this ball get through? And sometimes there's like a turnover on the other side, and you're like, oh shit, like, we totally missed that. And so I thank you for doing the full build up and the full highlights and being that credible soccer account.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, and there's no right or wrong in this thing. It's just how you want to consume. And so hopefully that's the right thing for our brand. So yeah.
I think everyone has like these preconceived notions, and maybe right or wrong about Portland. You know, the whole like keep Portland weird and all that stuff. And then you have soccer players as well. You mentioned like you're ultimately telling the story of the players, and a lot of players in MLS are not necessarily from the United States or certainly from Portland. So I want to just kind of hear a little bit about what it was like for you to come. You didn't grow up in Portland yourself, so coming to a place that has a pretty well established club and fan group and brand, what was it like for you to join, especially at a senior level where you're expected to provide, direction and leadership? How much it was like, and it's not a distressed asset when you got there, like they were already in a pretty good spot. So were you like, okay, let me learn a little bit about the fans, about the brand, about what's worked here? Where can I bring in a little bit of innovation? Where can we experiment a little bit? So what's that process like of taking over a new role, especially one with a culture like Portland, and where do you find that the opportunity to sort of specialize of whether it is like, hey, let's tell a story of the city and the brand, or let's try to bring in a little bit of the player element too, even if some of the players are from Colombia or other countries.
Yeah, no, I mean it was tough. I'll be completely honest. I think when this job came about, I felt like the team before had done, such a good job of cultivating the brand, that I always wanted to be the next person if I got the shot. I wanted there to be someone between me before I took something on like this. But the opportunity came, and I kind of just wanted to test out where I could be and what I can do. I think to your point about, what you do when you come in, I think I was really, hell bent on this being kind of a project. And in the year one, I think you would kind of keep a little bit of it the same, kind of go with the status quo, because I think changing something cold turkey, especially coming in during the year, might, be detrimental
Yeah.
to brand in some aspects. And I think I used that 6 months when I came in towards the end of the season, or till the end of the season, as kind of like my baseline for the things I wanted to change. So keep doing things the same way so I could benchmark what was going on. Then the next year coming in really strong, and the things that I felt we needed not even just a change in that moment that we thought are going to, take us to the next level, but looking, into the future on what we wanted to do. The press conference example is the best idea because the way MLS was trending, everyone's bringing in kind of higher profile names to the league. And I felt like, if we were to get into that game on the Portland side, that we would need the apparatuses to support something like that, to bring someone in that, they would feel that they were in a proper environment, especially on the social side. So, I kind of took those steps and, at some points we lost on those. At some points, I feel like we did some things really good that we were able to carry on. And then in year 3, which is this year, we're really putting those into practice, building the team that we want to get around that so we can fly, into this new era of MLS. So I would say, there are a lot of decisions to make. And I think crowdsourcing and talking to people and really seeing what the brand was about was really helpful for me. And I think, there's still work to do, which is the best part. I think if, it came easy and we were just kind of going status quo and going with it, I don't think I would be having as much fun as I do now. So I think having that challenge a little bit to figure this all out has been great and been great development for me as well. And hopefully it reflects off on my team and what we're trying to accomplish.
No, hell yeah. And I think coming from that background too of USL, of NWSL, I kind of want to get an insight into like what that did for you from, because I think about those brands as being, relative challenger brands. Like you kind of want to approach each day knowing that, okay, maybe there's something I can do today that's going to completely like break us out and we're going to reach millions of fans today. And like, because we have to take swings, we have to try to do something that's going to, help us reach those fans and grow that audience. We don't have these like huge built-in NFL audiences, for example. And even MLS with the Timbers, yes, you guys are, a well-established MLS club and pretty high up there in Major League Soccer, but you're not an NFL team. You're not even against Trailblazers. Even your audience are going to pale relatively in comparison. So like, do you have to almost think about like what's going to help us break through? What have you learned so far too that has broken through? Like what have kind of been some of those early learnings of this is what this really blew up on social? Maybe it was expected, maybe it was unexpected, or what can we do to really help us get on the radar of people that may not even know who we are yet? Like what are some of those mandates of really doing something that's going to, make that club rise up to the level where you can't ignore us?
Yeah, I think it goes back probably to my time at A&M. I think when I was at A&M, if you know anything about the school, I think the biggest thing that's ever said is you see clips of the Yell leaders and just kind of what games are about. And people have this kind of, wrong idea about everything that goes on there. So when we were at A&M football, we kind of had our own account that really kind of, I wouldn't say dispelled those, but just showed a different side that, that wasn't what it was all about. I think there was a good balance between it too, because we had the traditions, which you love. And if you wanted to be a part of it, you really got behind, but you also had the cool jersey drops, exclusive shoes, this and that you get on the recruiting side. So I think I've always just had that mindset of going in and changing the perception of what it was. USL, the same way. They were like, in some people's eyes, the brand that, kind of got pushed to the side in terms of American soccer, which I never really thought that, living in San Antonio in college for a little bit. I went to San Antonio FC games. Still love watching them till this day when I get a chance. And then going to NWSL, which obviously is really thriving right now. But at some point, everyone was just like, "Oh, this is the league that the national team players come and just to stay fit." But there were really some stories there that could be told, and I thought that was a really cool part about the NWSL and dispelling that. So, coming to Portland for the Timbers, a little bit more established, I'd say, in terms of some of those things. But also at the same time, I feel like, yeah, you're trying to reach the level of fandom that some of these, teams that have been around for a really long time and trying to be those teams. And I think the thing I always remember is, people can come in and say, yeah, you're not an NFL team or you're not this Premier League team or La Liga team, Bundesliga team. But to some people, the Portland Timbers are that NFL team. The Portland Timbers are their their Premier League team. And so I try to put in the work for those people because I know how much, the teams that I grew up supporting mean to me and what I want to see. So if you're able to admit that same sort of thing to them, you have a chance to build a really cool community. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. There's no God-given right for people to, push the like button or engage with our content. So we really want to give them something, that they can be proud of and a team that they can follow and support and content they like to see around that team.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it's nice that they are accessible. That if you're in Portland, and especially after the NBA season, you guys are the main show in town. Both on the Timber side, and I know when you were previously working with the Thorns as well. Like that's if you want to see high level football or soccer, that's where you go, and that's your team. And then you guys are there ready to welcome them with here's some content and some great content to help you get to know the team a little bit. When you're thinking about like marketing the team too, I think we've all seen the Messi effect, of course. We can get into that in a moment as well about what that's meant to MLS and all the clubs overall. But this idea of superstars, I think a lot of NBA, I mean, even up there in Portland, it was people may have not known the Trailblazers roster around the country, but the new Dame and the new CJ at the time too, CJ McCollum. And so when you're thinking about marketing the team, and maybe even this comes into talking with whoever the coaching staff is or who the team offside are of we think these players are the future of our team, or this is a star player that we think is going to glom on the fans. Or maybe there are some players that either maybe more or less comfortable in front of the camera, maybe more or less comfortable speaking in English, more or less speaking in Spanish. So how do you think about like featuring players, thinking about the trying to grow these sort of homegrown superstars? Obviously on the women's side, you look at like Soap Smith with the Thorns as well, has become a tremendous superstar both on and off social. So like, how do you think about, again, identifying those players that are going to break through, both that are ones that are amenable to it and that fans are amenable to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, speaking on the Thorn side, just the dynamic of that and, working at the NWSL, the national team players are, highly regarded. People are going to, switch team allegiances with their players going to different sides. So I think that's one thing in that, in a sense, like sells itself. Where I think the difference on the Timber side is I feel like the brand of the Timbers is almost like the star player and just playing for the Timbers. So we've always tried to keep that mantra. I don't think this is speaking out of turn, but I think probably one of the most notable players you would say would be Timber Joey as our mascot. I think everyone sees the victory log slices and him holding it up and just the tradition of that, which I think is really cool. And I don't think that's anything to really, shy away from. But I think on our side, we have the obligation to tell a lot of stories. And I think, since I've gotten here, I've really made it a point for us to, no matter the player, their play on the pitch, their status within the team. I think there were stories everywhere to be told. And so we really tried to make that a point to get them out into the world and tell their stories. I think when I played a little bit in Spain and I look back on that time, I probably have like 4 pictures maybe of my whole time of playing in Spain and a couple videos. And I think back and I was like, if I had a media team there and I was able to like send pictures back and show my parents and my friends like what was happening, it would be the best thing ever. And so now I put our players in that situation, and that's kind of my why. These guys are coming from Colombia, Paraguay, Chile, Brazil. And luckily now with MLS, you can see the game all over the world. A little plug for Apple, but I think that's just the most important thing is being able to tell those guys stories. And, in turn, you have an audience now that's kind of built in from these other countries that now can watch and tune into games anywhere. And I think with the growth of the league, that's something that's really important as well, is just being able to tell those stories and even going down into one thing that we've really tried to hone in on is our academy side. We have probably the best academy we've had in the Timbers kind of short history. And so really showing those players and getting them kind of accustomed to what we do and ultimately banking on, if they make it to the first team that we have archived footage and can tell their story from when they were young up to, now and when they get into the first team. I think that's probably been one of the coolest things I've been a part of since I've been here is we signed a homegrown this year. His name's Sawyer Jura. But he's Oregon like through and through. He's from Bend. When we were able to do his announcement, he had pictures from when he was, I think like 7 or 8 with Timber Joey coming to games. We were able to recreate some pictures with him and his family from when they were, on the field at games when he was younger to now. And he's been in the first team squad a couple times this year. So it's been awesome, and that's kind of what we're striving for from a content side is just having all of that stuff built up to tell the best possible stories we can and have players in this team that people feel like they know and can connect with. And then, in turn, you feel like it's a family and a community that you're building and you don't have to depend on, X star coming in for you to be a Timbers fan. You're just a fan of the club.
Ruben, that's so good, man. There's so many different directions I want to go with, but you got me first smiling ear to ear. And I will say too, like you guys get great engagement on your academy accounts. It seems like, and you do a great job of on the doing collabs as well on Instagram. It seems like, and that helps you drive you more. But I'm totally with you. Of like, if you feel like you know those players, especially if you feel like you've known them for years, you're gonna tune in and watch. Like I might not care about whatever name a XYZ sport, but if someone from my high school is playing in a game in that sport, I'm gonna find out how to watch that because I know that person. I feel like I'm one of them, and it's just that's a great way to think about it as well. When it comes to those international fans in particular, like Paraguay, Chile, what is that story like internally for you guys? Like, how do you tell a story to whether within your own team or with your bosses, even of like, we are growing this fan base out here. They're not going to buy a ticket. Maybe one day they'll come to Portland, a few of them. But like, how does it look like from an ROI perspective for you? Is it ultimately like, hey, we are helping the league? We're like we want to drive subscriptions to Apple. Is that the ultimate ROI for those international fans, as well as maybe some merch here and there as well? Like, how do you think about the growth of those non-local fans, given the opportunity you guys do have to cultivate those international fan bases?
Yeah, I think on the easy answer, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, for the international fans, if we can make them a fan to where one day they make the pilgrimage to Providence Park, that's probably the goal, right? But I think more so, you don't have to buy a ticket to support the team. You can be a supporter kind of anywhere you want. And I think that probably the best story I can give is there's a little restaurant here by Providence Park, and I went one day with my mother-in-law and my wife, and we're sitting there, and the waiter came out. He's really nice. He was just kind of talking, and I think I had some club merch on, and he asked about the team, and he said, hey, I'm from Chile. I've always wanted to go to a Timbers game, but I feel like I'm always working while they're going on, or I don't know too much about it. And I was like, "Oh, you're from Chile?" I was like, "We have one of our players, one of our DPs is from Chile as well." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know Felipe Mora. He played for my team back home in Chile." And so I kind of knew, and we started to talk. And Leagues Cup was coming up, and I feel like Leagues Cup is one of those where you get a team from Liga MX in Mexico, and that's where you kind of have a fan base that might be, I'd say it's like the gateway games to the Portland Timbers brand, because you might like your team in Mexico, or you might be the rival team of the team we're playing, and you get to come in. So this waiter, I got connected with him. I got him tickets to come, and we got him to meet Felipe.
Wow.
Felipe ended up scoring in the game. It was like a great piece, and so I thought that was kind of the essence of what the Timbers are about. Just a community. This guy worked steps away from Providence Park, had never got a chance. He was able to take his family there, and on the plus side, met a player that he supported for a long time. and you just hope that they have a great experience. But now I wouldn't be surprised if he's come to more games and
Yeah.
or even bought a kit for Felipe and things like that. So we have a lot of opportunities like that, and I think you can get really caught up and say, oh, we want to do content opportunity to like sell the club. But I think, if you have enough of those moments just organically that happen, I don't think you necessarily need to, maybe show that or amplify that in the best way. Maybe sometimes you just do it out of the kindness of your heart,
Yeah.
and you just kind of see it all come together for the club. And I think that's the essence of what we're kind of all about.
I love it, man. Like I always used to think about like how can we create if we create one super fan a day or one super fan a week, that adds up and compounds so much over time. And now that I think about that, the Chilean guy that works right near Providence Park, maybe he wears a kit on home game days now, and people ask him about it when they come into the restaurant, and that helps spread the word even more. Maybe he puts up like a timber scarf up on the wall at his games, and now he becomes like this fan evangelist, and that same thing could happen in Chile. You get one super fan down there, and now all of a sudden they're walking like advertisement and billboard and just telling everyone, hey, did you see the game last night? Like you should see that goal they scored or whatever it might be. And I love that aspect of just how fandom can compound when you have these deep organic engagements like that, which I just love.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously, like from a social and content perspective, like we recorded those moments for him. So if he ever gives us the green light or wants that story told, I'm all for it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think just, and a lot of our players too, I feel are like that. They really just like to engage with the fans. I think some of the things we do before the match are really cool. And we have like a little walkway that the players enter and they get to sign autographs and things for fans. And we always make sure to highlight that because I feel like it's a special part of the match day experience. And coming, from a school that is very big on tradition, I feel like we're kind of the same here in Portland. Like we have a long history, coming up on our 50th year of the club. So, those sorts of things are just things that you can highlight and just show and people love and feel a part of something at the end of the day. And I think any footy fan that you probably speak to just wants to feel that, just wants to feel that community and feel something to be a part of while supporting their team.
No, there's so many. That's just so well put, man. Because like I was just thinking about how that sense of community and fandom. Because first off, I was thinking about like the Aggie walk or whatever before a game is very similar to what you're thinking about with the Timbers. But just the idea of that sense of I'm part of something bigger than myself when you're at games. And football, soccer is where that resonates the most. I think where you have fans all chanting in unison or singing the songs and together or holding up a giant tifo together. And I kind of want to dive into just a couple minutes left here with Ruben Dominguez with the Portland Timbers. Ruben, I can keep you all day, but I'll try to get you out here momentarily. But I can pick your brain here. I kind of want to hear about what it's like to engage with those super fans. I think something that's unique to MLS or to soccer rather, I guess in general, is those supporters groups. You have a supporter section, you have diehard fans, the ones that are banging drums, and it's almost feel like it's their job to chant and yell and stand up all game, no matter what. What is the relationship like? I guess from Timbers' perspective, and maybe MLS in general, with those supporters groups. Like, do you like help them help you or help them become better fans of the community? Is there a sort of exchange of communication happening with them, or they kind of doing their own thing? Like, what's that relationship like, and how can they kind of be your quote unquote like voluntary marketing force outside of games?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think of them like as a marketing tool.
Right.
I think the cool thing I could say about the supporters group and ourselves is like we have a common love, and that's the team. And I think when a relationship's kind of built on that, it's fun. It's a chance for us to push each other and go further. I can speak for myself and the ones I speak to. I always feel like they are respectful of what we do, and I think if they have suggestions or things they want changed, it's always brought in such a good way that I really feel like we can run with and help out if that's the goal. So, like one recently that I can speak of is, this year we've really put an emphasis on kind of the behind the scenes of matches. So, matches that something happens, good wins, milestone moments, things of this nature. We do a post match recap, and you get to really see in behind the scenes what happens in the locker room, even in team talks, everything that you would want behind the scenes of that moment. And we've gotten really good feedback. I think, some of the things that have been said is that, we've never had this amount of access. It's so cool to see, what happens after games, because sometimes they walk off the pitch and then you're done.
Yeah.
So, that I think that's been cool, and just having that feedback. Obviously we can show what happens within the stadium, and they're a big part of that experience. And I don't think we ever really take that for granted, that they're gonna, show up every game. So we have to keep bringing it on our side, which I think is fun and a good challenge. So yeah, I don't know if it's like that at the other clubs around the league, but I definitely think with us, a very big mutual respect. Like even walking on the pitch before the games, there's, a couple that will seek me out and say hi. And I just love that. I don't know if you get that anywhere else, but definitely love that, and very special and unique to what we have at Providence Park.
Oh yeah, no, I just love the aspect of supporters groups in general. You have these super fans that out there at every game, and they love everything you give them. When it comes to that like that behind that kind of all access content that you mentioned, what was that like when you guys had a new coach come in with the hiring of Phil Neville, and getting like understanding what the trust level is, what the level of access is that he wants, that players want, the players feel comfortable with. What's that give and take like? I'm sure. I mean, everyone that works in social goes through this. Maybe not quite at the level when you are bringing in a new coach and having to learn what they want, what they prefer. What was that process like for you guys of kind of learning where the boundaries are and getting that buy-in, getting that trust?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think everyone goes through it, like you said. I think from early on in Phil's tenure, we were kind of just there. So I don't know if he knows any different from what we were, but I think early in preseason we did mic ups. I think in his first 2 weeks, he wanted to come out and take in an academy session, which I thought was really just cool. It was a cool experience, and I don't know if I expected what I expected, but he brought all the boys in, talked to him. He was an academy player himself coming up through Manchester United, so I thought it was just a great kind of tie into this new era that we were kind of having. So yeah, I think he's probably more used to the cameras than a lot of players and coaches in that regard. So we've just been in there, and it hasn't really gone bad since. So I think we're able to keep doing that. But also too, we have massive respect for, the sanctity of the locker room and all that goes on there. So we never want to put ourselves in a position where we're showing. So yeah, but it's been good so far. I think the fans appreciate it. I think even from our internal side, we like what's going out and showing just a different aspect of what we do, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and ultimately, especially if someone's coming up from whatever a USL club or a third tier team in another country, or like the fact that you guys have these resources and are creating these great content pieces it's ultimately a good thing for everybody, and it shows that like, hey, we know what we're doing here, and we're telling a great story, and we are creating awesome content to build up our fans and our partners and all that. So it's all good stuff, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from our end, we had a lot of new people come in on our digital side. So I think everyone coming in new, we were able to kind of set that standard together rather than, having kind of like old like preconceived notions of what's going on and things like that. And everyone coming from their different spaces too, I think was important, because there's a lot of different perspective, and we were all able to come together on what we actually wanted to do and accomplish. And I think it's gone great so far.
Last one for you, Ruben, and I promise you this will shareable stat. I know I've been going way too long, but you're just so full of good knowledge and wisdom and energy. And we talked about this a little bit offline too, which is why I want to pick your brain about a little bit. Is that revenue generation aspect of the role? I guess every team is a little bit different how they're structured and how they work with and collaborate with the partnerships team. So I guess like how much of your team and your job is focused on that sponsorship aspect? What's that relationship like with the partnerships team? How does sponsor content come together? And kind of what have you learned during your time there?
Yeah, we have a good system, and I think it's evolved over time. But we've set up some things to where if we feel there's an opportunity to move something from an organic space to like a more revenue generating space, we have the tools in place to move that forward. And I think there's a good understanding between both departments, our, partnerships department and then our department on, the things that kind of matter and what we want to do. I think the good thing that they've kind of provided us is they really, seek out kind of what we want to do or what's even possible. So I think there's a lot of good, healthy conversation around, our partnerships. I think one that we just did is we have a deal with Safeway, which is a grocery store, and we took a player and we did a 4-part series. And one of those I thought that was really good, and it wasn't really in the plan, but we got all these groceries from the store for the shoot. So we were able to come together with the tickets department to deliver it to an annual member, or what you would probably know as a season ticket holder. And we were able to do kind of like a special delivery there. It was really off the cuff. The player was more than willing and kind of thought it was a cool idea, and so we were able to execute it in a very short space of time. So I thought that was really cool, and kind of the essence of what we're trying to build. It's like everyone was on board. We had a shoot, we had production there, everything ready to go, and we were able to move on that. And I think it was good and beneficial for the brand, beneficial for us, in the sense of we gave the partner something that probably wasn't in the script, but I think something that they appreciated and reflected, positively for their brand as well. So yeah, all in all good. And I think we're always looking for those moments or those things that we can do. One of my best friends in the world works in the partnership realm. So when we're not talking about other stuff, it's kind of like looking and we're sending stuff like, oh, wow, this was a great activation. This was great. So yeah, I'm always kind of looking for those opportunities, not because, we're just like always trying to, bring in, new partners and make money, but more so that I really appreciate when there's a partnership that really looks kind of organic,
Totally.
and, it is not just that kind of logo on a picture and pushing it out. I think with everyone in the social space probably appreciates that as well. So I think it's really cool in those senses.
Oh yeah, no, when it feels genuine, and I like the mindset you had of like how can partnerships help us do something that we want to do, and ultimately help us create really awesome content. I'm also like thinking my dream space in my head now, like you guys find like a landscaping company or something where Timber Joey can come to a member's house and like cut down the tree for them or something.
Yeah, no, I mean you can look across it. I mean, we probably a lot of them live on more on the LinkedIn spaces than our normal channels. But I think match days we have, one of our partners, Dutch Bros Coffee, great. Yeah. We had to kind of come up with something, and now we deliver drinks before the match for the players, which is cool. So on their walk-ins, they get a drink. And another one, I think Rakia, they're a vodka company, spirits, and Timber Joey actually cut a block of ice
That's
with his
awesome.
chainsaw, which was actually really, really cool to see. So, that sort of thing, like, is just awesome. Like I watched it and I was just like, yeah, why is this video an hour long? It just keeps going and going and going. So
And that's like tailor made for social media too. Like who would not when you hear like Timber Joey's gonna cut through a piece of ice with a chainsaw. Like, where do I go? Sign me up. I am watching that wherever I need to go. TikTok, Instagram, wherever. That is fucking awesome.
yeah, I think he enjoyed it too. So
All right, Ruben. I need to chop off some of my questions I was going to ask you because there's so much here, but that's so much fun with you. We're going to have some more fun with you in our set plays segment coming up. The first episode's shareable stat coming at you right now. Awesome stuff from Ruben Dominguez of the Portland Timbers. Check out the Timbers handles across the board. They do a great job with their academy, Timbers 2. And of course, Ruben spent some time working with the Portland Thorns as well. One of my favorite NWSL teams to follow when it comes to their content. But stick around because we're having more fun coming up with Ruben in our set plays segment. The first episode's shareable stat. This shareable stat comes from a recent study commissioned by YouTube. So always, take studies commissioned by platforms with a little bit of a grain of salt. But this stat is particularly interesting, and they found, looking at Gen Z, that 65%, so around 2/3 of Gen Z, identify themselves as video content creators. 65%. Now, they do couch that 8%, only 8% of Gen Z consider themselves professional video content creators, but 2/3 of them identify as video content creators. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you are working for a team or any organization, give these Gen Z fans or Gen Z users opportunities to indulge that interest, to create video content. Whether that means incentivizing with contests or sweepstakes or giving them access to some raw footage they can play around with a select bit of footage, or opportunities to have their content really amplified by you guys. UGC is certainly a big thing these days. But you can also give opportunities and give them a platform to create content by soliciting it as well in direct to consumer, direct fan relationships. These Gen Z users want to create content. They already are creating content, as the stat shows. So how can you help amplify that, help integrate your brand with that as well, and activate that passion they may have for your for your organization, and maybe even turn them into fans who are creating more video content about you, about your team, about your brand. So super interesting shareable stat, again, based on a study by YouTube looking at Gen Z users. 2/3, 65% of them consider themselves video content creators. Super interesting. Talk about it, think about it, converse about it. More importantly, though, stick around because we're going to have some more fun and learn a lot more with Ruben Dominguez of the Portland Timbers. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Ruben Dominguez. He is Senior Director of Social Content and Strategy for the Portland Timbers. Ruben, you kicked ass during your interview segment. Are you now ready to take a few set plays?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Hope so.
Let's see how you stroke the ball in these set plays. All right, number one, tell me your favorite Timbers tradition. And bonus, since you used to work with the Thorns as well, your favorite Thorns tradition, if there's one that sticks out.
Ooh, oh God, there's so many. I think one that kind of encompasses the whole of the both clubs is during the national anthem, the scarf waving. So if you've ever been to Providence Park, you probably see it. And then at the end, they yell the team's name. It's like my favorite part of match day.
So great. And it just goes back to what we were saying too about just that communal feel of soccer games in MLS. And I'm lucky enough to have been to a Timbers game, and I saw that play out in real life, and really, really cool. Providence Park is awesome. Number two, we didn't get into the weeds of this during your career path journey, but you did some broadcasting way back when. So tell me your most memorable on-air moment or call from your broadcasting career.
God, you went deep into the YouTube archives. I respect that. My favorite one, probably, I didn't do too many, but there was I guess it's the Lone Star Conference, maybe the Heartland Conference when we were in for St. Mary's. They had a semifinal basketball game, and Christian Minor hit a game-tying three to take us to overtime, and we went crazy on the broadcast. Probably not the most, didn't show the most decorum there, but it was an awesome moment, and one with one of my good friends that I'll never forget.
Oh, that is awesome. I will definitely try to find that clip somewhere because I would love to hear you going nuts on a game tying three. That'd be awesome. Number three, tell me the app or platform or software that you spend the most time on in an average workday. It could really be anything, just app, platform, or piece of software.
Ooh, this one, I got to shout out people at Slate, Slate Teams. It's kind of a editing platform for on-the-go social. I probably, spend most of the day there, especially if we're trying to resize content, add captions. They do a really good job of having your whole branding library in there. So you're able to make everything look really nice and consumable for social. So shout out Slate.
Hell yeah. And if you guys follow the Timbers on social, you'll see their Instagram stories. You guys make good use of Slate for sure. And it looks great. So love that one. Love that platform. Love the guys that run that platform as well. Number 4, tell me the sickest soccer play you've ever witnessed live. And assuming it's different, tell me the most viral piece of content. Doesn't necessarily need to be a soccer play, but tell me the most viral piece of content from your time with the Timbers.
Ooh, gosh, good ones. This player is going to LAFC, so I feel bad saying this, but I was in attendance for Olivier Giroud's goal against Crystal Palace. It won the Puskas Award. I was actually like 4 rows behind the goal, so it was insane. The person I was with will vouch, but passed out after the goal just from screaming. Is really cool. But also up there was Dairon Aspria's bicycle against Seattle in the Derby. That was just insane, and I felt the roof come off of Providence Park. So yeah, those two probably, and then for viral content, gosh, it might still be pinned on the Timbers account, but we had one that kind of popped off, at least in the soccer realm, from Juan Mascara. He's our young Colombian right back. He basically kind of got clipped, and he started to grab his leg, and he ended up a guy coming up to him to get the ball, and he nutmegged him. And we put a really good fitting sound to it. I won't spoil it, so y'all can go look at it. But it ended up doing really well. That was probably the most viral thing we've had, but it was also fun. So
That is awesome. It just shows that like, every game there's opportunities like that where it doesn't necessarily need to be a goal, even just like a simple play like that can turn this to such virality just from the right edit and also just a really sick play too. A nice nutmeg is always awesome.
yeah, no, great from him. He actually was the one that brought the clip to our attention too. So it was really cool to just put that all together.
That's even better. Number 5 for you, Ruben. You were at A&M. You worked there as well. You alluded to this a little bit during the interview, but just tell me what the Midnight Yell experience is like at A&M. To someone who's never been to it, what's it like going to the Midnight Yell?
Man, I mean, most people won't understand it, but like the one word I can have to describe it is euphoric a little bit. This day and age, it is hard to get college age students to go anywhere. That's not like a bar or anything at midnight. So it's really cool that everyone comes to the stadium. And I think just one of my favorite traditions when we go back on top of them all. And I've seen it from the stands, and now sometimes I go back and meet some friends, and I get to be on the field. And I think that's even better just to see it as a whole. I know there's viral videos that come out of it from the yell leaders and everything, but just one of the best traditions that you have at A&M, and I think something that makes it really special.
Hell yeah. If you're listening and don't know what the hell we're talking about, or if you're international, never even heard of a college football in Texas A&M, Google it, YouTube it, look it up on TikTok. You will not be disappointed. And what a cool experience. Hashtag gig 'em. All right. Number 6. Tell me, just what was the experience like for you during the pandemic? I think we all kind of had our own experiences, and you were working in sports at the time. What was it like for you?
Wow, a little topsy turvy. I was furloughed, and I say that just because I feel like that was a lot of people's experience. So I don't really like shy away from it, but I think it was a good reset for me. I'd been working a couple of years at that point, and I felt like it was a good time to just kind of lay on the couch and just reassess life. And I was able to, kind of collab with one of my friends in building a freelance company called Border Boys Media. That's really taken off. And so it's cool to just see that. And that was kind of like the fruits of the labor during a really kind of trying time for me.
Yeah.
But it ended up being really positive for everyone around. So it was cool.
No, I appreciate you talking about that, and definitely a case of lemonade from lemons or whatnot, whatever analogy you want to use. So that's good to hear. I never said we talked about a little bit about this offline, but just tell me like what has the Messi effect been like from your perspective, and whether you're being at another MLS club, Not necessarily coming into Providence Park too soon. Like, what's it been like from your perspective, both from helping the league grow and awareness, and also just from your spot with the Timbers?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, like I think it's been cool for the league. Just as a fan of the league for so long, I was able to be like I was really young when Beckham came in, and it was like my favorite player, and I had the kit. Didn't buy a Messi kit, but I think it's just been really good for the league. And I think from the Portland perspective, we've used this as a time to really kind of re-educate fans on our traditions, what we do, what Providence Park is all about. And I think it's been really positive. So yeah, it's been cool. I think it's gonna be one of those things that we look back at and look at it as a real turning point for the league.
Hell yeah, and I'm sure a lot of subscriptions sold to Apple, then they can check out other games as well if they're on there, and just more general awareness around the world of MLS and its place. Obviously, Messi, well known, turned down several hundreds of millions of dollars to go to the Saudi Pro League, among other places he could have gone. So great to see, and certainly like you said, almost a turning point. There's a before and after, and you guys will continue this growth during and be after Messi as well. All right, Ruben, time for our food question number 8. We always got to ask our food question. Tell me if I come out there and we hang out in Portland, tell me the best meal to get in Portland and where to get it. And also bonus question, because I love college cities, college towns. What was the best meal that you had in College Station?
Ooh, gosh, some tough ones. All right, I guess I'll say for Portland, very, very like underrated food city if you've never been. I'm honestly like I came from San Antonio, which I thought was, one of the best, especially Mexican food wise. Portland, my spot that I probably take everyone to is Cheryl's on 12th. It's kind of like a brunches sort of place. I get the Portuguese fried rice. It has genuinely never missed. I think I've probably gone now like 20 times. Cheryl's Portuguese fried rice,
Hell
the
yeah.
best. But there's some other ones in there. 10 barrel pizza, grassa, the pork belly mac and cheese. It's all really good.
My mouth is watering. All right, how about College Station? How around 8 a.m.?
Oh man, yeah, the same thing. Very, very underrated. I'd say I'm not like a huge breakfast guy. Like anyone that knows me, I'm not like a huge breakfast person. There's a breakfast spot called Hullabaloo. I think it is on Guy Fieri's show, but anyway, they have some amazing food. That's probably one of the best places. But also, there's just some other places, Chimmy's, some stuff on Northgate. My late night spot used to be Antonio's Pizza. So I don't think it's there anymore. So shout out them. But yeah, Antonio's Pizza hit Hullabaloo, probably the top spot in College Station.
Oh yeah. So there we go. We'll get Antonio's Pizza at 2 a.m. and then next morning we'll get a whole blue for breakfast. I like it.
Yeah.
Number 9 coming down the wire here, Ruben Dominguez of Portland Timbers. We brushed on this a little bit, but you guys hired a pretty damn big name as head coach not that long ago. Phil Neville. So just tell me what the experience was like. When did you hear that we were going to get this guy, and then what was the strategy like from your perspective, being really in charge of the content? Just maximizing that announcement and his first day.
Yeah, oddly enough, I had just watched the Class of '92 documentary, and then a couple of days later, Phil was going to be our head coach. From what it seemed, I think they were still working out some stuff, but we got a little bit of head start on that in the off season. Yeah, it's been great. Like Phil has been nothing but accommodating, and I think it's just been kind of a great spot around the training center and games and traveling, and just a really bright and bubbly guy, great banter. I think the one story probably from his announcement that was really cool is he sat down and did an interview, and just like sitting there and hearing his stories about his playing days and what he wanted to bring and his appreciation for the place. I think he's been a great fit here. And so we want to do everything we can to help him succeed.
Love that. That's great, and it's really cool to have. I mean, if people are just MLS fans and don't realize what a legend he is in the sport, like that's just it's so cool to be able to have him as part of your club, and good for MLS in general too.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, last one for you, Ruben. Tell me the non-MLS sports team whose social media you like in general, or is it, if you can't choose one, just a specific post that's really inspired you.
Ooh, man, some good ones there. I'd say all the teams that I kind of support all have really good social. I think that's a requirement for me in supporting a team. I'll say this: I'm a Raptors basketball fan. I just kind of grew up liking Vince Carter, and so I followed them for a really long time. Some of their social copywriting is amazing. Same thing with the Yankees. I went to a Yankees game when I was really young, and so they've just kind of been my team. So I really appreciate the copywriting from those two teams. And yeah, another shout out, I feel like, just from the English soccer space is Brentford FC. I have a friend there, and yeah, I feel like they just do a really great job on just kind of hitting on moments they can capitalize.
Oh yeah, no, some really good ones there, and I like that you call it the copy too. I think about like MLSE and the Raptors, and I think about their creative as well, and the fact that they have a copy that stands to you is just really cool to hear that. And yeah,
Yeah,
I'm with you on Redford as well.
yeah, big Drake guys. So they dropped the Drake lyrics, and so it's like, yeah, it's cool.
Hell yeah, no, you know. You had kicked ass in your set plays. You scored on pretty much all of them. Really impressive stuff. Oh, now your chance to take over the podcast, and this time you can shout out anyone on social media. Just tell us your social media all-star of all. It can be someone that you enjoy following, you learn from them, they make you laugh, that you learn something, they amuse you, whatever it might be. Tell us who they are, what platform or platforms they're on, and why they're following.
Yeah, tough one, but I'll give it a shout out to England and the FA. I've got to meet with a couple of their folks over the last couple of months and just kind of get to know them and see their processes. And I think they do just an unbelievable job across all platforms. And it's been really cool to see during the Euros. So I feel like fitting time during the Euros to kind of check out their stuff and what they're doing with the Lions Den.
Hell yeah. No, I like that a lot. It's always interesting to see what the national governing bodies do and the national teams do, because they really have to like just get up during these major tournaments, especially, and that's when their time to shine. So great one there. I enjoy following too. And then how about you, Ruben? Where can we find you, as well as all things Portland Timbers across digital social media?
Yeah, obviously the club, first and foremost, at Timbers FC, pretty much on everything. Also give our academy and developmental pages, T2, at Timbers FC2, and at Timbers Academy, doing a lot of good stuff there that I hope we can keep and continue to build on. And then personally, I'm at Ruben J. Dominguez on all platforms. So yeah, really appreciate this. This has been amazing.
It's been so much fun being able to learn from you, being able to learn about the Timbers. Just tremendous stuff, Ruben, and we enjoy your content, and we'll continue to follow along. And you are now my second favorite team in MLS. Maybe my first favorite. I don't know if I'll go with LAFC yet, but definitely go Timbers all the way.
We'll try to be one by the end of the year.
Awesome stuff with Ruben Dominguez, Senior Director of Social Media Content Strategy for the Portland Timbers. Cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today in the middle of the MLS season. Check out everything the Timbers are doing across the board. Again, they do a tremendous job of covering their team, covering all parts of the organization. And we cannot thank Ruben enough for coming on the podcast today and sharing some of his time and wisdom with us. But that'll do for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NGH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Connect with me there, as well as checking out the website, dsmsports.net, where you can find every episode over the last 10 plus, nearly 11 years. And of course, stick around because in a couple weeks, we'll have a new episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.